If you're new to Genshin, you may have hit this button and saw these weapons. These are the Battle Pass weapons.
Just what are the best Battle Pass weapons in 2025?
Now, the first one we want to touch on is the Black Sword. This is a weapon you may have seen propped up by older Genshin Impact content and guides, talking about how it's one of the best weapons you could have access to as a free-to-play player or a low Battle Pass buy or whatever it is you want to call yourself. And it is still pretty good, but I will say that it's kind of fallen off a little bit as Genshin Impact has aged. 3 years of Genshin Impact is going to change some things up. It's going to give you a pretty significant amount of crit rate, and then on top of that, it's going to boost your damage from normal and charge attacks by 20%. This is okay. A lot of characters have come out that do a ton of their damage up front from their elemental burst and elemental skill, like characters such as Ayaka. And the healing ability on this sword, listen, if you've seen a guide or anything else that has talked about how awesome this healing capability is, it's largely irrelevant now in Genshin Impact, in my experience. It was okay back in the day where people were trying to build DPS main genes and stuff, but nowadays we have so many great supports and healing options that it's just largely irrelevant. So it's a pretty fair option for you to spend your Battle Pass on. I'm gonna give it around like a B+. The new Battle Pass weapon that is also a sword is gonna be the Wolf-Fang. Just like the Black Sword we just talked about, the Wolf-Fang also has crit rate as its main scaling stat, and they have the same amount of base attack. They both are basically trying to power up different things, and like we just talked about with the Black Sword that powers up your normal and charge attacks while also giving you crit chance bonus, the Wolf-Fang is gonna give additional elemental skill as well as elemental burst damage bonus, and on top of that, it's also going to give you bonus elemental skill and elemental burst crit rate. So this weapon's basically the inverse of the Black Sword. If you're finding a character that you're using a lot of normal and charge attacks, the Black Sword's going to be a little bit better for you. If you're finding that you're going to be using a lot of sword using characters that use their elemental skills and elemental burst do a large amount of their damage, then you could look at something like the Wolf-Fang to give you a large amount of crit rate while also damage bonusing those two specific aspects of your character. And I find this fairly useful. I'll give the Wolf-Fang a small bump over the Black Sword, and we'll leave it about an A-. The Serpent Spine is something we definitely need to talk about. It's going to be one of the best weapons you can pick up on the Battle Pass. Now, the Serpent Spine is a claymore weapon, so this is going to be good for basically every claymore character in Genshin Impact because of how amazing the Serpent Spine is in the flexibility department. It's going to give you a large amount of crit chance, but the ability that it has is one of the easiest ways to boost damage for any claymore character in Genshin. As long as you're not taking damage, you're going to maintain and start gaining access to these stacking damage bonuses of the Serpent Spine. If you get a couple of these at rank 5 and rank 5, you're going to get a 50% bonus damage to everything you do. Normal attacks, charge attacks, elemental bursts, and it works for every type of damage in the game. So it doesn't matter if your claymore character is a geo character or doing pyro damage, or if they're even just a physical character, it works on everything and everyone. And it does have this stacking damage downside where you're gonna take more damage with the stacks up. But honestly, as you start playing Genshin Impact, you're gonna get better at dodging enemies. You're gonna gain access to stronger shields and utilities to keep different enemies from actually even being able to hit you on these claymore characters. One last thing we definitely need to touch on real quick is that Fontaine has seen a resurgence of this mechanic where multiple characters lose HP for a bonus, and simply losing HP, draining your own HP, or with characters like Frida, draining your teammates' HP, does not count as damage, so you will not lose the stacks of your Serpent Spine. So don't feel bad about that because it's not going to prevent you from stacking up the giant Serpent Spine stacks. And another fantastic thing about the Serpent Spine and gaining access to the stacking damage mechanic is even in stuff like the Abyss and Domains, if you have the character equipped with Serpent Spine in your front party slots, you will actually be able to passively gain these stacks because you're still treated as the active character even if you're not in combat. So you can wait a couple of seconds, wait for yourself to get the max stacks on your Serpent Spine, and then start the timers on your domains or your Abyss floors. The talking stick, listen, I'm gonna try to find something good to talk about the talking stick. I'm just gonna rate this thing like an F though, because if you're picking a claymore option from the Battle Pass, just pick the Serpent Spine, okay? Yes, it gives crit rate, it gives attack percent bonus, as well as some elemental damage bonus percent increase, but honestly, as a opportunity cost of spending your $10 or $15 a month or whatever it is you're spending for the Battle Pass, pick the Spine if you want a claymore. Don't pick the talking stick. I tried. There's just not a lot to say about it. It looks kind of like it's a Monster Hunter item. I don't know. The Sacrificial Jade is the brand new, or at least the newest Battle Pass catalyst. And just like all the other Battle Pass weapons, it's going to give you even larger amounts of crit rate. This one's 8% at level 1, so it's going to be even higher than the other ones that start at 6 or 4%. And it does have a very small amount of base attack in comparison to some of these other weapons, one of the smallest amounts you can have for a 4-star weapon. Now, as far as the ability goes, when you're not on the field for more than 5 seconds, your HP max is going to be increased by 32%, and you're going to get an elemental mastery increase of 40. But you will lose these effects if you've been on the field for more than 10 seconds. So while the Sacrificial Jade does have a lot of cool things on it, there's really only a couple of characters that can fully utilize the weird sort of smorgasbord amount of different stats that are shoved into it all at the same time, leaving me to give this thing like a B- unless you use it on like Neuvillette. Counter to that though is the Solar Pearl, which is the older Battle Pass catalyst. This thing also gives you crit rate because it's a Battle Pass weapon. Have you seen what's going on with the Battle Pass weapon so far? But unlike the other one we just talked about, it doesn't give you elemental mastery as well as HP percent. No, it's going to give you that crit rate in addition to elemental skill and elemental burst damage increase or normal attack damage. You can get both of these bonuses at the same time. When you use a normal attack, you're going to be buffing your skills. When you use your skills, you're going to be buffing your normal attack. So the Solar Pearl is a very flexible weapon for so many different DPS catalyst characters in the game. Yes, that means it gets an A. Yes. The Viridescent Hunt, crit rate, yes, Battle Pass weapon. The ability here, I don't know what you've seen about this thing. I don't care what you've seen about this thing. I don't care how cool it can do, and it can suck things up with a vacuum thing. The suck on this thing, the cyclone that it generates, has such a small amount of crowd control on it that it's basically irrelevant. The damage that it does has a very tiny multiplier on it, and it doesn't scale off of any different elemental damage percent bonuses. So this 14-second cooldown that you can reduce with multiple refinements of the Viridescent Hunt is absolutely abysmal. This thing gets an F. It is not worth your time, not worth your battle pass. Scion of the Blazing Sun is going to be a charge attack focused battle pass weapon. You just have to look at the ability. When you hit an enemy with a charge attack, a Sunfire arrow will descend upon them, doing additional damage based off of your attack as damage. But the best part is the Heart Searer debuff it's going to put on these enemies. Anyone with the Heart Searer debuff is going to take increased damage from further charge attacks by 28% at refinement rank 1 for 10 seconds. And this thing is good, but it is very narrow. We saw this be released with a character like Liney, and you could also use this on someone like Ganyu if you want as well. Basically, if a bow character has a level 2 charge attack that is part of their main rotation, which there's only a handful of, we just talked about, well, the 2 that exist, really, I'm sorry, Yoimiya. So for those 2 characters, if you're not going after their 5-star weapon, this thing's gonna be a fantastic like A. For everyone else though in the game, it's going to be about, I don't know, like a D-, a D+. No one really does charge attacks on their bow characters that often. It's just those 2. So the Deathmatch, it's a pretty awesome weapon, but it does have some downsides that I don't think are talked about all that often. You'll see it in a lot of damage formulas and damage sheets for a lot of polearm characters, and it does give you a ton of crit rate. It's very useful in that way. Do know that it has the lowest base attack among all 4-star weapons. It's very similar to what we talked about earlier with the Sacrificial Jade. The Deathmatch does have a very small ability here. Basically, if you're fighting just one guy and one guy only, there's only one thing next to you, you're going to get a slightly larger attack bonus than if you're surrounded by more than one guy. And in that case, you'll get an attack as well as defense bonus. The defense bonus in the large scheme of things is irrelevant on basically every polearm character because the damage that you take isn't really reduced that much in Genshin Impact based on your defense. And there's not a ton of defense scaling polearm characters. You could use this on someone like Yunjin, for example, although she does have better weapons as a support character such as Favonius Lance, even in those circumstances. So the Deathmatch is going to be a way for you to gear up a polearm character and get a very substantial amount of crit chance very easily because of the insane amount of crit chance that it does give you, but you're going to have a lower base attack and the damage bonus is not going to be super consistent, this attack percent bonus, because it's going to fluctuate based on if you're fighting just one guy or more than one guy. With that being said though, it is still pretty decent, and as a weapon overall in Genshin, I would give it about a B+, although you could argue me down either to a B or maybe sometimes argue me up to an A-. I'm a pretty flexible guy when it comes to that sometimes, as long as you got some cool maths. Now, the Ballad of the Fjords is a very interesting weapon. And while this might look like it's super unflexible, very restrictive, it's really not. Let's talk about it. For example, say you're making a vaporized team, you're gonna have a hydro character and a pyro character in the party. Well, for the third type that you're gonna be putting in your party, it's probably gonna be an Animo character. And now you already have 3, or maybe you're doing a Dendro focus team, such as a Hyper Bloom team. You could have someone in your party that's Dendro, then you need a Hydro character, and then you could put the Ballad of the Fjords on someone like Scion, who's an Electro character, give them that big crit chance, okay base attack, and then also get this very large elemental mastery bonus on top of that. So it's not actually all that restrictive, and you can find very good uses for characters like Sino, or even someone like Xiangling, who can be an amazing melt or vaporize character for you. Xiangling as your pyro character, Xingqiu as your hydro character, have an Animo character in your party, or maybe a cryo character, and you've met everything that you've needed to make this weapon good. So Ballad of the Fjord is going to be an excellent weapon for you, as long as you're making use of that elemental mastery, which isn't that hard to do. So I'm going to give this thing an A. It's a pretty great weapon. So I don't know which weapons you're going to go for, but the Spine has always had my heart. I might be a little biased with it, but it is so good. Let me know which one you're picking down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Why are we giving them $10?